And hello, everybody, and welcome to today's coaching clinic, all about freedom of mind around money. And this subject has come up just numerous times in sessions I've had with clients in the last 2 weeks, where the subject of money just seemed to be the thing that kept arising. I've seen a few things in this area, and I want to share those with you today, whether you're listening to the recording or you're here with me live. Getting freedom of mind around this subject will not only help you stop being in avoidance with money, but it will also help you just have a more graceful, gentler experience with this currency that really is God in action. So we're going to start today with a gentle grounding meditation, a visualization, guided thing. I do this on every coaching clinic, just help you connect with your own wisdom, connect with a higher source than your busy mind, and get what you need. And then from there, we'll move into a little bit of sharing from what I see about the subject of money and freedom of mind around that. And then I want to make this practical to you too by having you ask your questions. If we find there aren't many questions or people have got what they need, we'll finish early. We won't just keep going. But if there are questions come to mind, just know that your question is often planted, not just for you, but for everybody listening. So don't be afraid to ask your question or, come on and explore with me. So here we go. Let's close our eyes now as we go into this grounding vision together. Start by taking deep breaths of 4. We've learned that this number carries us. It's very grounding. It's very stabilizing. So breathing in through the nose, 2, 3, 4. And out through the nose or the mouth, 2, 3, 4. And in through the nose, 2, 3, 4. And out through the nose or the mouth, 2, 3, 4. Begin to grind into that breath. In, 2, 3, 4. And out, 2, 3, 4. Keep that rhythm going until I speak again. Feel yourself just sinking into the chair, the sofa, the bed, and your back fully supported. See roots coming from your feet, down through the ground, down into the underground, and right down to a rock at the bottom of the earth. Wrap those roots around that rock. See golden light coming from the rock up through the underground, through the ground, up through the floorboards and into the feet, and up through the feet and up into the legs, the kneecaps, the thighs, up into the hips and into the tummy area, up into the chest and all the way up the back of the spine, right up to the top of the shoulders, down through the arms, out through the hands and the fingertips, and back up through the inside of the arms, up to the armpits, up through the back of the neck, up into the head, around the top of the head and down through the face and out through the hair. Surrounded, embalmed with this golden light of your true nature. Gold in weight, gold in energy, gold in value. Gold as a color of divine inheritance, divine energy, just like money. And I'd like you to have an image of yourself, and I'm just going as usual with what I see. But I'd like to see you standing, just visualize yourself standing with your arms reached out and hundreds and thousands and millions of, I don't know, euros, pounds, dollars, wherever you are in the world, just falling down upon you gently. All those dollar bills, all those notes just falling down upon you. Get an image of yourself receiving your divine inheritance. Get an image of yourself open to abundance. And as you stand there with your arms wide out, receiving, just know that but for what you think you can have, all of that is available. Just receive that feeling of abundance. And I want you to see yourself taking that abundance and giving it away freely. Where would you give it? What would you give to? Who would you help? Where would you put it? But I want you to see yourself giving it out. Because if there's one thing I've seen about money, it's the law of use. It must be used. It must be kept in circulation. So just imagine yourself with all of that abundance and see where you'd put it without judgment. Just notice in your mind's eye where it's going, who it's going to. And of course, not all of it. You're keeping and using part of this for yourself. But where else and who else and what else do you want to give to? Now, as always, let's go on the golden path of truth and let's hear what wisdom has in store. So in your mind's eye now, I'd like you to see a beautiful golden path. It's rich, it's safe, it's your place to journey higher. Step onto it now and walk along the golden path, still in this feeling of richness. And as you approach the end of the path, there's a body of water. Head towards it now. And on the other side of the water, there's a bench. Go sit down on the bench. And as you sit there, contemplate for a moment a question, a concern, something you want clarity on. And you're either going to get an answer in terms of a word or a sentence or a couple of words, or you're going to see an image, or you're going to feel a feeling, and you're just going to know. But before asking it, if you prefer to call in a guide, someone who you trust deeply, someone, whether it's a spiritual entity or it's a loved one who's passed on, or it's even an animal that's passed on that you trust their wisdom on, or if it's simply your higher self and your wisdom, bring your concern, your question, your doubt forward now and receive direction. Thank your wisdom, thank your guidance. If you haven't gotten anything, set the intention to receive it in your dream state and as you awake tomorrow morning. Now come away from the bench, back on past the body of water, over onto the golden path, and walk along the path. See all that money following you everywhere you walk. It's still pouring down upon you. It's chasing you from behind. It's coming at you from in front. It's following you from the left and the right side. You can't get away from it. You can't escape it. It's all around you. And just keep walking until you come to a little white fence, little gate. As you open the gate, step down the steps and back into your body now. Feel those roots coming from your feet, down through the ground, down into the underground, and wrap those roots around that rock. Feel the golden light of that rock support you. In your own time, begin to open your eyes, moving your fingers, moving your toes. Just coming back to the clinic now. If there's anything you want to write down, do so. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more settled. Don't worry if you're not. I'm going to share a few things about money that I've seen and that I hope will allow you to open up around the subject. I want to start by saying money is not the exception. It's true that we humans carry more thinking about it than we need to. But that's because we continue to rely on our little selves when it comes to this subject. And yet, why would we rely on our little selves when this very tangible thing is ultimately God in action? Money moves. It's always moving. Every split second, it's moving from account to account to account to account. Every split second, it's in motion, it's in movement. People are paying for things right now as we sit here. It's always in movement, movement, movement. It's energy. And yet, so innocently, we can get insecure about this thing and stop it moving. We hold on to it tightly. It's not made to sit still. Money is made for movement. Just as the waves in the ocean don't stop, neither does money. So why put a lid on this thing that has been born into the world to be in motion? It's a bit like putting a racehorse that has been born to race and run and win. It's like a bit like putting a thoroughbred racehorse in a showroom. There's nowhere for it to go. There's no outlet. It's bubbling up with energy and it's not getting out there. Eventually, it gets stuck. Eventually, there's no motion. The first thing I want you to know about money is it's made to move. It's part of nature. And the more you can see that and be in relationship to that, the freer you get around it. It's not the exception. I know it can look like the exception, but the reason it can look like the exception to the rule is that innocently you're carrying more insecure thinking about it. When in fact, you want to be inviting more God around it. As we free up from Bob the drunk guy in our head, warning us, scaring us, debating with us about money, as we free up from that, we come back to the now. In the now, you have everything you need right this second. In the now, you get fresh thinking about finances. Maybe I'll try this. Oh, this might be a good idea. Like a client of mine today has been gaining freedom of mind about this subject and experiencing more abundance. And she said what came to her yesterday was to move her money to somewhere else and to free herself up from subscriptions that she'd been running for 2 years and never using. When we come back to a quieter state, we get fresh thinking about every subject, and especially the subject we have a gun to our head about. Money is there to be used, not abused, not disrespected, but to be used. If you want to see more money, you want to start wisely using what you've got. Depending where we are on our level of consciousness, we will make decisions from that place. When we are on the lower floors of consciousness, we make decisions that may not necessarily yield us the money we desire. When we're on the lower floors of consciousness, we may limit ourselves as to how much we can receive or accept or allow. But I want you to see that we're doing that. God in action isn't doing that. We're doing that. We're deciding that's it, that's enough. That's too much. That's not enough. Who made that up? My own journey with money has taught me that when I'm scaring myself, I find it really hard to pay bills and look in the direction of cash, even if it's sitting in my account. even if it's there. And I've got to let myself off the hook about that. And you do too. You've got to see that sometimes you've got a gun to your head. And the best thing to do when you've got a gun to your head is just wait it out. And then get your freedom of mind and make your decisions and do what you can. Even with all I know about keeping money in circulation and how that allows more flow to come in, if I'm scaring myself enough about the future, if I'm running ahead, my actions will demonstrate that. My inaction will demonstrate that. We want to be gentle on ourselves about that. But we want to stick to a fundamental truth, which is relying on our little selves when it comes to this subject doesn't work. Unless we're one of these people that has a lot of freedom of mind about money. Now, freedom of mind about money is not just go out and make more money. That's not freedom of mind about money. A lot of people, especially in the coaching industry, promote making more money. If you want to stay on a treadmill for the rest of your life, which, as we know, isn't really possible, at some point we burn out, at some point we give up, at some point we make a mistake. Freedom of mind about money is not being scared anymore or as scared. I really knew my experience around money had changed when I got a call from the bank one day, and I was in a cycle at the time where I had to clear my credit card in full every month, £7,000, $10,000. And I was operating at that level of movement, so it had to clear. And I got this call from the bank, and they wanted to talk to me because I think from what I recall, it hadn't cleared. And I really knew my experience around money had shifted, because instead of being completely freaked out about this situation and what am I going to say to the bank manager, and oh my God, how am I going to deal with the debt, and oh my God, what am I going to do? Instead of oh my God, I felt completely easy. And when I got on the phone and I was calm, and they said to me, Grace, when's this money going to clear? I said, just came out of my mouth, just purely out of my mouth. It came, it'll be with you in 48 hours. I didn't know where that came from. What do you mean it will be with them in 48 hours? Wisdom spoke from that quiet place. And in 48 hours, it was there. Now, somebody who doesn't have freedom of mind about the subject might freak out completely, and their strategy might be, I'm just going to make as much money as I can for the rest of my life and for all of my blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to work myself to death to never, ever be afraid again. That's exhausting. And it's so unrealistic. For me, freedom of mind about money is knowing that it's God's stuff we're dealing with, and getting quiet enough to hear the ideas, the direction that the God stuff wants us to go in to bring the money forward. On some occasions, the God stuff has told me, go and get a loan, which I did. And again, I saw how that was able to be paid back through ideas that were launched into the world. There are millions of variables for how money can come to you. It is not just through your service. During the worst moment of my life, Francesco's death, I was hit with the biggest tax bill I'd ever seen. As if I wasn't brought to my knees bad enough with the loss, here I was being brought to my knees financially. It didn't move me. Because I could see I had a choice in whether or not I scared myself to death. And how interesting to me that the exact amount of money that was needed for that tax bill was the exact amount of money that Francesco's savings had allowed. How interesting. God stuff. I knew better than to hold tight to that, as if nothing else would ever be available. I knew, whoa, that number is for that number. Let it go. Similarly, when I was starting my coaching business, and the coach I was going to work with was charging me a phenomenal amount of money. And I just didn't have access to that money. I didn't know where that would be. I didn't have it. And she said to me, do you have a credit card? And I said, no. And then it occurred to me, actually, I might have a credit card because when I was a school teacher in London, I was offered credit, but I never took it. Well, lo and behold, I go to call the bank and see, and they tell me that I have the exact amount of money on the credit card, which is exactly the amount of money she's charging me. I'm glad I had the common sense to see the connection and let it go. And I used that card and I made the decision I was going to make that money back in 30 days because I was scared. I was scared to death. I was scared to death my family would find out that I had used a credit card because it was a big no-no in my house growing up. Lo and behold, I not only made it back with my conviction and desire and following aligned decisions, but I went on to actually have a coaching business, which has carried me through now for the last 8 or 9 years. Doesn't mean I don't have the money or financial stuff that goes on in everyday life. This is a subject that I too can scare myself in. We all do. But the difference is that once we see it's not the exception to the rule, in other words, when our mood drops, our vision about money is going to look worse than when our mood is higher up in the level of consciousness. Our vision about money and our fresh insight about what to do about money and our ability to have hopefulness around money changes. It's a state of mind you're up against. It's not a world of lack. It's a state of mind you're up against. It's not the exception to the rule. What are you hearing? What questions do you have? How can I help you? Feel free to type or feel free to come on. Kelly?
I think I have a question. Is this an okay time for that?
Yeah, sure.
I really appreciate your story about how there are times when the exact right amount showed up on a credit card and it kind of bent your reality of how money can show up. But the part I was also interested in is kind of what is it about that decision that is a good decision versus when it isn't a good idea to actually put that money down and do more debt? Because I think there are some scenarios out there where people are manipulated into, well, if you just do this, then this is going to cause that. And so the spiritual angle on this, I guess, is what I'm curious about your story about that.
Yeah, good. It was an aligned decision, Kelly. That's why it worked. I felt that in me doing that particular training, I was going to get forward movement. On the phone with the coach, and thank you for bringing up the fact that manipulation is something that goes on in this industry. On the phone with the coach, I was in a good feeling. We can trust the feeling we are in when we are speaking to someone who's selling us something. And actually, we only want to trust that feeling that we're getting, okay? We only want to trust the feeling we're getting, not the words or the promises of other people, but that feeling. So that combination between an aligned decision and a good feeling was clear for me. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. And the thing I hear in there, I'm just tying it to what you've been saying earlier around the flow of money. So you said something interesting in there is that you said, I knew that this was something that was going to forward me. And I just think, I think lots of things can forward us, but it's an aligned way. And I guess the only other part of it was I was curious about the conviction. Like, it's an interesting thing that would be out of my comfort zone to say, I'll make it back in 30 days because I don't have the confidence, the knowing that I could.
Mm-hmm.
So that might have been your business model or just where you were in your consciousness, but I'm just kind of curious about that. Like, I was like, I don't know if I could make a promise that I could make it back in 30 days. I don't know. I haven't,
I was so scared of my family finding out that I was being driven by fear. Many people make money being driven by fear. It wasn't like a knowing. It was a gun to my head. I certainly couldn't live my life like that, where the only way I could make money was with a gun to my head, which is why I wanted to open this conversation today. Mm-hmm. Many people do. And then they wonder why they fall out of love with their business, why they burn out, why they don't like what they're doing, why they feel trapped and stuck. Like, we've all heard the scenarios of the people with millions in the bank and absolutely no happiness, and the people with nothing in the bank and they've got smiles on their faces. So we know that the money isn't where our well-being comes from. But a certain level of money can certainly yield us less thinking about it. Okay. That was just where I was at on my journey 8 or 9 years ago. As I got freedom of mind about money, I stopped operating from, I need to make this back. I've got a gun to my head. I need to make this back. This needs to work. And I noticed that I just started getting an easier experience with money. It didn't mean I didn't get into trouble. I did. Remember, the bank called me. I started getting into trouble because I kind of started like being less afraid of my experience. But because I wasn't afraid when I was in trouble, I heard my wisdom and I always got what I need. See, this is a different direction than just make more money and then you'll be okay and you'll have freedom of mind about money. This is, you're okay. And the deeper you see that you're okay and how divinely made you are, the easier you can access your divine inheritance. It's always there. So Pamela is asking, you're saying to address money from the higher floors of consciousness. Well, that's not always possible, but what I am saying is on the higher floors of consciousness, there is no problem around money. We have greater access to fresh ideas about money. We feel hopeful up there. We see what we need to do and we get on with it. We are not stuck in avoidance and inaction because we're just less in our head about it. So things just fall into easier movement. Catherine has said, if you've always experienced fear and lack around money, it's hard to hear your wisdom. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about this? Yeah, I do. Even in the fear and the lack, you want to see that those feelings of fear and lack mean nothing about cash and availability. Feelings of fear and lack are letting you know the way you're thinking about money right now isn't helpful or true. Feelings of fear and lack are about your state of mind. They're not about money. We've just innocently attributed the fear and lack to that subject. Now, here's the good news. As you start to see that your feelings are on your side, letting you know how you're using your mind in any moment, you stop getting into the conversation about it all and you have access to wisdom. So let me give it to you this way. One of the places I get wound up is around like diet and what should I eat and how could I feel better. And when I get really wound up, not only does my stomach tell me I'm wound up by how bloated it gets and how uncomfortable it gets and how all of that, but the place I go to is to get into a lot of which diet is best for me. And I start like swinging on that, you know, like which diet. I forget that the feeling of discomfort isn't telling me anything about the diet that I should do. It's telling me that I need to relax. And what comes to me from a more relaxed place might be a better way to eat, or it might not. Wisdom sometimes presents something else, oftentimes presents something else, whilst our little mind is busy looking for how to fix the problem with the diet. Or in this case, how to fix the problem of lack and fear. How do we fix it about money? Come back, come back, come back. The feeling you're living in means nothing about money or your inability to access wisdom. The feeling we live in is letting us know about our state of mind. This is the most helpful piece of information I've ever learned. It has transformed my life. My experience of money has gotten easier. My experience of death has been more graceful. My experience of sudden change has really been more in flow. Not just me, my clients too. I know I talk about me here because we're all together. But this is the most helpful piece of information that can give you freedom of mind around any subject you've got a gun to your head about. It just so happens that a lot of the time we're innocently putting a gun to our head about something that is God in action, about something that if we would leave it alone for a minute would course correct itself as we get centered and move into motion with our ideas. And sometimes those ideas are things we don't like. Let's call the bank. Let's get a loan. Let's use the credit card. Let's put the savings over here. Let's invest in this. Let's avoid that. Sometimes. I don't know what your wisdom will bring all of you. I just know you can trust it. And that you don't want to be making decisions about money or spending or future or saving from a place where you are really wound up. That's your invitation to come back to the God stuff, not the Bob stuff, but the Bob, the God stuff, the aligned stuff. And you know by the feeling you live in. One more question, comment before we close. Lillian, this is really refreshing to hear, Grace, from a perspective of how practical our wisdom could be when it comes to money. Yeah, very practical, Lillian. Yeah, definitely. And especially as business owners. Kelly?
I was just going to ask maybe one more question about that feeling, that feeling where like it's not quite ready. We've talked about this idea of the ripe and the unripe or whatever. Yeah. What would be the wisdom around that? It's kind of like when it's not quite really ready. Like you don't quite get enough wisdom to make a good, solid decision around money.
Well, you got to wait it out. If it's not ready, it's not ready. What's wrong with waiting it out?
Well, sometimes there's just financial stuff coming down, like the bank calling and saying in 2 days, it's like, oh, I didn't get that wisdom in 48 hours to, right? Doesn't always come right then.
It does. You just have to listen for it. Like in that example, if I had put myself under terrible pressure and I was scaring the life out of myself about the bank calling me, I don't know if in that moment I would have accessed what I accessed. But I sure as hell wasn't going to let the insecure thinking in through the door. So this is where we have choice. We get to close the door on the insecure thinking that comes in. And as a result of closing the door, i.e., I'm not going to keep dwelling on this, I'm not going to keep ruminating on this, I'm not going to keep thinking about this. I'm just going to get on the phone to the bank and see what happens. I wonder how this will work out is a wonderful, wonderful stance when you're faced with something that is unknown. I wonder how this will work out. But our wisdom is always pointing and sharing and letting us know. I was thinking about this the other day when I was washing the dishes. Why did I ever think that I would be sent into the world without some sort of guidance system for how to be here? Whoever decided we're going to be on this particular planet at this particular time didn't just drop us in without some GPS system built in. And yet we kind of all behave as though we need to be really scared and we need to like worry about ourselves and we need to like plan everything and work everything out because, we've just been landed here with no inner system. We are the best made app in the world. It's all in here. We feel the direction. We know from the inside what's right, what's not right for us, what to do, what not to do. It's just we've been tuning into Bob. And as I described to one of my clients earlier today, it's a bit like the television broadcast, for the news. There's a main broadcaster and she's giving you the news. And then there's ticker tape along the bottom with all the other news that's happening. Well, you can't be tuning into both and your life work out. You want to be tuning into the main broadcaster and realizing that the ticker tape isn't what you need to listen to. The ticker tape is the noise in your head that just keeps going. The main broadcaster is this incredible inner guidance, this GPS system. It's just we've been in the habit of getting like really distracted by the ticker tape. But I can tell you, if what you heard in your head about money was switched to Chinese, you'd have all the freedom of mind around money in the world, because you wouldn't have a clue what was being said, what beliefs were being said, what concepts you had learned, what ideas had been planted in your head. You would just have a freedom of mind. Luckily, you don't have to change your internal language to Chinese to get this. Luckily, you simply have some patience and gentleness with yourself. You stop looking at how to fix your money problem and you start looking towards divine mind's guidance for you on this subject, knowing that this subject is God in action. This subject isn't removed from divine mind's potential. This is divine mind in movement, in motion. Let it go. Let it go. Be in movement with it. Feel your decisions and go with the ones that feel aligned. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't do things because you worry about how others will take it or not take it. And if there's a place for you to get out of relying on your small self, I'm talking to myself here too, not just you guys. It's this place, anything around money, anything that you don't have freedom of mind around is an invitation to have divine mind with you, guiding you, conversing with you. And sometimes that is waking up at the beginning of the day and saying, guide my spending today. Show me where you'd have me put this. Show me what to do about this. Give me a very clear, direct direction with this. And then be open to what you hear, see, or receive. I hope this has been helpful today. If you'd like some one-to-one support on this particular area, get in touch. Or if there's another area where you're looking for freedom of mind, today is the last day that you get 50% off my coaching packages. So whether it's a retreat you want to do with me here in Italy or whether it's online coaching, get in touch. Happy to have a conversation to see what you need, and we'll take it from there. All right, everybody. See you next week as well for Coaching Clinic. Bye for now. Ciao.